Welcome to Total Cost of Ownership. This is Mark Spielis at Central Michigan University. And in this very short podcast, I want to get into a review. Not so much on the total cost of ownership, but I want to talk to you a little bit more about the profit leverage effect. So this is going to be more of a review from the last class session. So the profit leverage effect is being used quite a bit throughout the industry today, especially to drive down cost and to improve profitability. I'm going to explain that a little bit later. But let's go back on the exercise that we had in class relative to Gentex. Okay, so in this, just to refresh you with the exercise from class, the company was Gentex, and we were doing a material cost decrease of 4%. So the material cost for Gentex was $35 million, okay, and we had a 4% decrease. So the material cost went down by 4%, and as a result of that, that money, that reduction in the material cost, the cost of goods that they're purchasing for their rear view mirrors, went right to the bottom line. It went right to profits, right? So the material cost of $35 million, the material cost after the decrease, the 4% decrease, is $33.6. So that is a savings of material cost of $1.4 million. That goes right to the bottom line. It goes right to the bottom line in profit. Okay? So to get the profit leverage effect, and really what we're asking is, how much additional sales would be required for us to meet the $1.4 million or the 4% cost decrease? Okay, so the way to calculate that is, first of all, you have to know what the profit margin as a percentage is. In this exercise, the profit margin as a percentage is 8%. So once you have the elements of the profit margin as a percentage, as well as the material cost decrease or the profit margin, you divide the profit margin increase, $1.4 million, by the 8% or 0.08. And so in this case, Gentex would have to sell an additional $17 million, $17.5 million in sales to go ahead and equal the $1.4 million in profit. So the $17.5 million in sales times 8% will be equal to the $1.4 million in profit. Okay, so that's the profit leverage effect. All right. So why is that important today? You see a number of different industries today, and these are average profit margin percentages, right? And so if you go right to the bottom here, media, retailing, transportation, and automotive stock. Boy, those sectors of industry are at very low profit margins. So you can imagine that they're focused on the profit leverage effect. They're trying to find ways to reduce the cost of goods sold, to improve their profitability based on reducing cost of goods sold. All right. So just to give you an idea, cost of a tractor trailer about $120,000, a trailer around $32,000. So when we look at assets and return on assets, transportation and those transportation functions are very expensive. So when you look at another formula we'll spend time on in class is return on assets formula, and that's simply your net income over average total assets. Or total assets. Net income, another way to look at that is net profit. So when you look at the net profit over total assets, that's going to give you a return on assets formula. Okay, so return on assets versus profit margin by reducing the assets in this case and by outsourcing. And a lot of companies, this is why they outsource. They want to reduce their assets. They want to reduce the number of assets they have. Thus, they can improve the return on assets. So in this case, by outsourcing, Gentex improves their return on assets from 44.4% to 53.8%, almost 54%. So a significant increase in the return on assets, even though they have somewhat increased their cost. Okay, so in this case, it's a good example of the fact that even though they've reduced their net income by $500,000, they've actually though improved the return on assets. If that is their measurement, that's how they're being measured. Okay, so the rest of the online class is going to be focused on total cost factors. It's going to evaluate, and you'll hear this through the podcast class for today, total cost factors. You're going to look at invisible costs beyond just the cost of the product. All right, that's going to force you to take a look at some of these other costs that are included, these invisible costs, which are sometimes identified as ownership, post-ownership, and acquisition costs. So thanks for tuning in to the podcast. This is Mark Spielis. Make it a great day. Thanks.